There's a couple things to ask about when making and talking about the living nightmare that it takes to make two projects, at least. Not joking. To make projects that are at least two things done at one sitting or one take in a span of a month or two, or even a few months or several, maybe a dozen months or more. And that to me stands out irregularly to me when I was still committed to doing something that's so special for the viewers. The things I ask about is why I was so on edge making the content I was always born to do. And that it was very impossible for me to contain all of that, especially making and doing two scripts for two different fan films, like the Sonic the Hedgehog film, like a Scourge film, or whatever, or even a James Bond origin story with so many characters. I even described a few people, like my friends, about the idea of trying to do something like a Secret Agent Sonic fan film in the style of 007 or Mission Impossible. And at the time, I've mentioned a few things that don't hold up now, especially when I'm trying to make it more, you know what I mean, like when I'm trying to make it feel more hip by emulating Michael Bay films. I don't think that was such a bright idea, a very best inspiration to do at all, that I could even do something that to do like what I would have to do by emulating something that's like in a different style, actually the same style of doing a Michael Bay movie, and turning Sonic into an explosive adventure. But for me, seeing the style of editing and cut and paste simply like Godfrey Ho back in the day in the 80s and 70s and 90s, whatever, and being used in crossovers, it just looks kind of gimmicky and made those stories feel dated as soon as I released the fan films. It just comes off like the elements I described exactly. A superficial method in attempting to make over the top elements of trying to make Daniel Craig's James Bond more hip. Same with Sonic the Hedgehog, make it explosive, violent, brutal, edgy. Try to say, make Sonic more edgy and very gruesome to subject matter. It might have been better to make an idea to shake things up at first in other areas, like with the characters, the conflict, the plot, and try to focus on improving the story that I was going to tell, rather than trying to emulate and relying on the Michael Bay films or even Rob Cohen. What about Tony Scott? I would say the series of films featuring Craig's Bond and my version of Sonic, like my fan films doing with Daniel Craig's James Bond and my own version of Sonic, it seemed to be very unreliable and very inappropriate to cross over with literally exploding things, like smashing ideas, the things to make it feel more hip, make it feel explosive, violent, gruesome, disgustingly gory, or even try to make inappropriate song choices to give it this different vibe. Something that hasn't been really done like that before. Almost common with the Godfrey Ho editing style I was about to try and achieve with something like that. And the biggest kicker of all, the nightmare wasn't even over yet. In 2022, I went on board to do the Operation Methless project. This time with extensive story plot lines, removing the leaves from the product and turning it into a love letter to Sonic 06. What could it do exactly? To focus on a human version of Mikey? Other people like Horace and Callahan that are from the Dirty Harry movies? And to that just extent of extending humans than Mobians by making more percentage than any other character in this world, I literally went in to make the whole film unfocused, disjointed, messy. It was rushed. It was inappropriately unnecessary to make something like that. A year prior, I did the Bully Maguire movie. And that to me had a certain level of disjointment. The whole story was so bad on the level I did with Operation Methless. A film that was so bad, so lengthy, it was over 4 hours. I don't know why I kept making 4 hour long movies like that. This same applied to Bond Begins as well. Or whatever. I remember the whole Bully Maguire film being 5 hours. And the longest was Reservoir Spies, which was like a 6 hour extravaganza, but it was messy. It was incoherent. The whole 2 hours was a final battle in the Boy Maguire movie. That did it. The film was over, and soon it was a fucking trash. It was a really trashy movie, too, I would say. I wanted to do the Scourge film with the use of voice actors. None of them were on board. Some of them weren't on board. They were probably moving on, and that I was really poor. I had nothing else around me. So I used artificially intelligent voices. That in turn, it was UberDuck, still in the real life identity of voice actors, and at the time, it wasn't really a very huge deal then. By the time the voice actors outcried it and they hated the fact their own product and their voices and their copyrighted, impression or voice was being stolen, so I stopped. I was able to listen to them. But they weren't after me, thankfully. But I did agree with them in a whole another extent. The voice actors would need to be very, very respectful. They want to do something that they need to tell you. The voice actors would need some very respectful manners to not have their voices go away and attempt to make these people obsolete, be replaced by robots. And it was a very great example of how unhinged I was with the use of AI. It wasn't fair to use their voices in a very distracting and broken grammatical way. I don't know how the damn thing works by just telling how broken the AI system like UberDuck, many others like Fake You are, by literally using nothing but stolen voices. And the struggles to read words that are grammatically correct, being most likely pronounced or spelled out right, and the grammar is broken, that they never are going to say things properly. That's like a small potato to me. The quality is potato. I'll tell you why. Because it's bad. That this is the worst kind of branding of AI ever. I can most likely tell you guys that the reason why I stopped using voices that are stolen and modified badly by AI, that was the main reason that I stopped using AI, and that's why I stopped making videos for a while, because it was too much. And that's why, if you guys don't know, that I'm right, but I always will be right until you know it. Would you live in a world being run by robots? No, exactly. So you would say no, like me too. I don't want to use a software that steals voices in an insulting way. Like, it puts harm into a voice actor's life. Listen to Mike Pollock, dude. Usually it's bad. It will always be outrageously this bad. This, UberDuck and Fake You and other things to use. That's why I never use them anymore. Therefore, that's why you haven't seen any projects like this in a while. That it was a hard time to do something like this, and I was so glad that the egregious error I did in past projects, so I erased them. A friend advised me not to use AI anymore, but I did tell them not to use things like UberDuck. But thankfully, I'll tell you this. The only one I can tolerate using is VoiceMod, which is a program that you can act through your microphone in real time to be like a person, like the narrator, Morgan Freeman. And it's like developed by a community of people. Their voices that are developed are there, especially impressions. So basically, it's a community of people that doesn't steal voices rather than impersonating impressions of an existing person. I remember Morgan Freeman digging the fact that his voice was right there in the interview, and he accepted it. Found it amusing in the interview. Now it seems to be a very big problem for a lot of celebrities and people in this current age of day. I can believe Morgan Freeman doesn't even care about it as much as now, but can move forward. But the thing is, without any AI, like VoiceMod, it makes the project a lot harder to do as such. I can tell you this. I want to have a hopeful future, you know? I don't want to give up the things that I love most. And saying this already, you're the best of all people I've ever met. You guys are so thankful. You are very grateful to me. I'm glad I was able to get all the views I needed. But let this be known. I will still make more videos for you. I will always voice act as Scourge. But there will be always one more thing. I can still contribute to doing videos for a lot of you people. Thank you very much. Peace.